Hello. I wanted to make a one tier list um, for 9 challenge, and I just wanted to state what the context is, what I'm looking for in a good wand, stuff like that, and which characters am I generally talking about when rating these wands. First of all, um, I value the early game a lot because the early game is the most inconsistent part of 9 challenge. And just having a wand, just having a good like early game wand, um, just increases the consistency of the early game. So in that context, I would rate a good early game wand, but like if I had a wand that's good early game but bad in the late game, I would rate that higher than a wand that's bad in the early game and then good in the late game. That makes sense. Um, And in terms of the characters I'm looking at, generally what the characters I play aren't really magic oriented. Like I don't play monk or mage a lot. I'm more looking into uh, say warrior or duelist champion, not duelist monk. Uh, rogue, for example. But for simplicity's sake, let's just say warrior because warrior doesn't really have any like game breaking gimmicks. So yeah, that's gonna be the context of like, which characters. And so let's start with the first one here. This is in no order in particular. Um, so let's talk about Magic Missile. Magic Missile is okay early game. Like it can, like for example, your mage, right? You start with a Magic Missile. That's fine. The problem with Magic Missile is it just does like mediocre damage. It just doesn't do much damage. It does as much damage as a throwing club, pretty much, and not as reliable because it takes charges and you can't always use them in all encounters. Um, so it's an okay early game, but when you get to prisons, it's not even good. You'd rather have you'd much rather have some other one to help you out. And people might say, well, what about the boost to other mons when you fire a magic missile? Well, the problem with that is it takes one turn to actually boost your wand. So you shoot the magic missile, and then let's say you shoot a lightning wand. Imagine if you just resin the magic missile and then just upgrade the lightning wand directly. And you can just zap twice instead of magic missile and then zap the uh, lightning wand. So the wand boost gimmick isn't really that good. I'm gonna be honest. So like it's so useless that it's so bad that I think it's actually useless. Like you should never like or I would say it's completely useless, but it's not useless. Well, that's given the bad damage and like base damage, damage scaling, just bad utility. Not even good in prisons. I would put this in D tier. I would just like to preface though that all wands are good. It's just this is relatively speaking, Magic Missile is terrible compared to some of these wands that we'll get to later. Alright, so next for Lightning. Lightning is kind of interesting. So Lightning has the best damage, best base damage, and damage scaling. Just like raw damage scaling and base damage out of all the other wands. if we exclude like some exceptions, like I think Fireblast has like multiple charge use. Like there's some special case like that, but if we're just looking at the raw numbers for charge, Lightning Wand is the best in terms of raw damage, and it's also really good at AOE. Um, so it hits targets that are adjacent. It hits enemies that are adjacent to the targets, and splits. I think it splits the damage evenly. But if the target is standing on water, it will actually not split the damage among the other targets. It will deal the full damage. So this is actually really good AOE if the target is standing on water. Um, so with all that said, it's actually like Lightning Wand has a really bad downside, and that is it also hits you if the enemy is up close. Um, in terms of the early game, that is a deal breaker. Um, once the enemy is standing to your face, it's not worth it to fire your lightning wand anymore. And for that reason, I would actually put it in B tier. It's a good wand and can be useful even in the late game. If you have a +3 lightning wand, um, it it can still actually do decent damage because of the good base damage and damage scaling. It's just it will fall off in the halls probably if you're just using this as a support. I don't know much about the magic classes as I was saying, but in warrior say, um, you're not one dump isn't really viable unless it's one of these ones I'll talk about later. So normally you're just using this to soften up targets. Um, and for that reason, B tier, I think it's a solid one. B tier is good. All right. Now for let's go to another damage one here. Disintegration. I actually think disintegration is it's an insane one. So if you just look at the numbers, disintegration isn't actually that good. It's like it's 2 to 8 damage, and the damage scaling is worse than uh, the lightning wand. It's only 1 to 4, whereas lightning is 1 to 5. But it doesn't have the downside of lightning wand. You can fire it up close, and um, it's actually still it actually increases damage when it goes through obstacles and enemies. So if you take that into account, the disintegration actually does that a lot of damage if you can um, make sure it goes through walls, make sure it goes through other enemies. A really good combo is using the Flockstone. Um, with the Flockstone, the disintegration will pass through a lot of targets, and in the end, the very last target will take a lot of damage. It also has additional utility, like breaking through barricades, burning through grass. If you know, it's kind of a niche, but it's still useful for that purpose. And the AOE of this, I would say the AOE of disintegration is better than lightning wand in the sense that there's no condition for like lightning wand for it to be good AOE, the enemy has to be stepping on water. But disintegration doesn't have that. All, as long as they're all in one straight line, you can make use of the AoE from Disintegration. And if you think about it, the more targets that you hit, you're basically like, let's say you hit 3 targets, you're tripling the damage of that one. Plus, it does bonus damage to the ones at the back. So it's even more than triple. Yeah, it's just amazing AoE, amazing damage. Can hit enemies through walls, can hit enemies behind walls. There's some things you can do with this too in the late game where, yes, disintegration damage falls off, but I actually like to keep it with me instead of using resin on this or like turning this into resin because you can use this to lure enemies one by shooting them behind walls. For that reason, for now we'll put it in A. By the way, these are in no particular order. Like the tiers are in no particular order. All right. So now let's move on to Fireblast. So Fireblast is one of the best wands in the game, in my opinion. So I would say like damage over time wands, like these two, in general are just really good. Because for one charge, you're doing massive damage. Even though like it's across a number of turns, the total damage is just way stronger than just the single zap, single damage ones like these three. And it's AoE. Like Fire Blast is AoE. It does massive damage, and there's some additional utility too. You can burn down barricades. You can do stuff like that, and it can also cripple if you use 2 charges. I think at plus, if you have 4 charges available, it will use 2 charges, and it will cripple all targets that you hit, and it will be a massive area instead of just the normal 1 charge area. And why I like this mod so much is it doesn't require you to upgrade it to be good. Like, for example, the Disintegration one requires like maybe 2 upgrades to make it good. Same with the Lightning one. Of course, you can still use the utility, but in terms of damage, you'll want to upgrade it. For Fireblast, you don't even need to upgrade it to have massive damage. Like at +0, it's already good. I would say like minimum you want this at +1, but even at +0, it's doing massive damage. It's AoE, it pierces, like it's just so good. There's a downside to this, if you can call it that. It's possible to burn yourself with this. You have to be especially careful when standing on grass. Make sure when you fire the wand, it doesn't burn. You don't get yourself burned. So that's like a downside. It's kind of like situational at times. It's also bad against blazing champions, like because blazing champions are immune. Also to like fire immune enemies, like the burning fist, for example, or yeah, other fists are immune to fire damage too. But all in all, this is a great early game, mid game, late game one. Doesn't really need much upgrades to be good. Oh, one more thing. You have to be careful of burning scrolls because, yeah, fire does burn paper. But despite having, I would say, massive downsides, I would still put this in S because it's just The upsides are just so good. It's insane. Okay, for corrosion, I could say a lot of the same things apply to corrosion as in Fireblast. Corrosion does a lot of damage, um, a lot of damage over time as well in an area. Um, but I think the problem with corrosion is it does need upgrades to be um, noticeable, I think, because don't get me wrong, even +0, it's good, but I think if you want it to scale in the late game, you will want to upgrade it. But although I would say corrosion damage, I think corrosion is the only wand I would say. Like let's say you're playing warrior, right? I think corrosion is the only wand that it's viable to just dump all of your upgrade scrolls into this. Because the damage scaling is just that good. I feel like it's almost what is it? Not cubic. Like it's polynomial in terms of scaling because you're increasing the cloud area and you're increasing the starting damage of corrosion. I'm assuming you all know what these ones do. Um, so yeah, the scaling on this is insane. Like imagine if it's doing 3 damage, 4 damage, 5 damage. Okay, let's say over 3 turns, right? 3 + 4, 7 + 5 is 12. That's 12 damage. If you +1 this, it's 4, 5, 6 damage. So that's like 4 + 5 is 9, +6 is um, 15. But since it's staying more inside the cloud, it's kind of like you want to add a +7, if you know what I mean, because they stay longer in the cloud. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that this does massive damage. No, it just like the Fireblast one, it does have a lot of downsides too. Um, you could very easily trap yourself if you don't know how to place the wand, um, and you can take massive damage too. But as long as you play around that, um, this will carry you throughout the entire game. And for that reason, I would put it in S tier. Um, okay, so now let's talk about Blast Wave. Blast Wave is an amazing wand. Although, even though it doesn't do damage, it's still an amazing wand. So, I think, like, I think the main purpose of this is to create distance. For example, if you're Huntress, it's just like, for example, you're Huntress, you want to shoot your bow, you use Blast Wave, and suddenly the enemy is stunned. You have like a whole bunch of distance just for a single turn, and you can shoot the enemy down like 5 times. That's amazing. And that's not the only good part about this. It also kills enemies instantly if you push them beyond the chasm, as long as they're non-flying enemies. So, like, let's say you encounter I don't know, a massive growing champion, or a giant champion and there's a chasm nearby, you can just one-shot them and no problem. Problem solved. It feels like cheating sometimes when you have this one. And yeah, it's insane. Um, I think there are a few downsides, not major downsides like these two, but I would say you have to be careful how to zap this one. Because you can push yourself with this one, and that's also a good thing actually. You can push yourself with this one as well, so it's like extra movement. But you can also push yourself down the chasm, which will hurt a lot. And I've done that before. And yeah, as long as you're careful with that, this is an amazing one. It can one-shot stuff. Like it can like give you massive distance. Um, yeah, it can stun enemies. Enough is said, really. Like this is S tier. I'd say the only real bad thing about this one is it's bad against Tengu. Like if you if Wandmaker um, gives you a choice between Blast Wave or some damage wand, you might still take the damage wand because you're not guaranteed to beat Tengu yet. So I think that's the only downside, but like even then, this is an amazing one. All right. Warding. So warding is an interesting one because instead of zapping enemies directly, you place these turrets, and these turrets attack for you. And I think they scale normally. They scale. Let me think. They scale 1 to 4 as well. So same as Disintegration. But um, warding. I feel like warding has the highest potential damage um, per zap, barring these two. We're now comparing it to the other ones. This has the highest potential damage per zap because you can actually zap uh, the same ward, and it will upgrade that ward. And when you upgrade the ward, it actually gives it 2 extra charges of like firing. So if you like, let's say you place a level 1 ward, and then you upgrade that ward. Okay, wait. So level 1 ward has 1 shot. It can zap at 1 enemy. A level 2 ward will shoot at 3 enemies. A level 3 ward will shoot at 5 enemies. So every zap is 2 extra shots. So it's potentially like high damage and whatnot. It also gives vision. So that's also a really good utility mod. Like this warding mod has a lot of great utility. Um, it has vision. It can block range attacks. Um, like other like niche uh, losing enemies. Like you can use it to lose enemies as well. Um, you can also infinitely kite with it as long as you have enough charges. Like um, you have cheese. You can cheese like fat enemies with it. Like you can even cheese the M300, the Caves boss. Um, and despite this, I think it has a massive downside. and that is it's a slow one. Because when you first zap it, when you first use it, it actually doesn't do anything yet. It just stands there and does nothing. It's only on the next turn where it actually does damage. Also, if you're relying on this for damage, it's very easy for your board to just get killed. Like it only takes one shot to kill wards, pretty much, unless they're level 4 wards. But most of the time, you're only having level 3 at most. So, this is like, I would say it's pretty unreliable to rely on as damage. And despite like all the utility and everything, this one is not that good early game. This word is very unreliable early game. I would say like I would say warding is one of the wands that I don't recommend upgrading. Um, like let's say you find it in the sewers and it's +0. I don't actually recommend upgrading this at all. Whereas other wands, I do recommend upgrading them. And so for that reason, I would put them in B tier. Um, like I feel like the early game is what hurts this one the most, and yeah, that's why it's V tier only, despite the great things I had to say about this one. Okay, so now the Frost Wand. A lot of people don't like this wand. Um, I think the reason is the non-spammability of this one. So for the other ones, you can just spam them, like Disintegration. I guess you could say that the dot ones can't be spammed because you fire them, they do the damage over time, and you do something else. But for the Frost one, you can't really like you fire it and it does no damage. Um, so you fire it the first time and it does a lot of damage, and then you fire it the second time, it does no damage, and you fire it the third time, it does no damage. This is because the damage of this is reduced when the enemy is already frosted, already has frost. So that's why people don't like this one. But yeah, the damage of frost is actually great. Like the damage scaling of this one. No, it's just a 2 to 8 mod, so same as like magic missile and uh, disintegration. But the damage scaling is 1 to 5. That's even better than disintegration. Um, and it also has the additional utility of slowing down enemies. And yes, people will say, well, you need multiple fires of the wand to actually even see uh, the enemy slow down. But there's actually a trick you can do with this if you can manipulate their turn wheel, um, where your first shot will guarantee that you buy a turn. So that's really good. You can also use this to cook raw meat and to disable the puzzle room with the fire. So this is like a solid one, and it's guaranteed. Like it's pretty much guaranteed to give you one free turn. So for that reason, like I would say like it's a B tier. The problem is it does require a few upgrades to be good. So I think B tier is fair. Okay, so for Prismatic Light, let's start with the good things about this one, because there are a lot of good things about this one. It gives you vision. It reveals hidden traps and doors. Like this one makes it a lot easier to find secret rooms. And it can blind enemies, although not very reliable unless it's very high level. It can blind enemies, and that's a really big deal. And because blinding enemies will disable, like for example, range enemies, right? If you blind them, they stop firing at you, stuff like that. And you can lose enemies by blinding them. There's a lot of utility with blind. I'm not going to get into that, but so it gives you light. It reveals hidden stuff. It blinds. There's the one big downside to this, and it is the damage output. The damage output is atrocious. It's just atrocious. Like I think it's 1 to 2. It's the same. It's the same damage scaling as this magic missile, but it has even less damage output than magic missile because this is only 2 charges, or like magic missile has 1 extra charge, while this is only like a normal amount of charges. So this is even less damage output than magic missile, although it does bonus damage against demonic or undead enemies. So it's bad in the sewers, good, like decent damage in prisons, but I guess that's an okay wand. I kind of want to put this in C tier, just because I don't know. I have to think about it because the utility of this is great, but the damage is just so bad. I feel like it's kind of in the same boat as this one here, the warding one. But I think the warding one is better. So for now, I'll put it in C tier. Okay. Living Earth. Now this is a really good early game one. I would say if you find a +0 Living Earth one, you can just keep upgrading it all the way to Tengu, and you'll be breezing through sewers and prisons. Like this is such an amazing early game one. It's crazy. Like if you upgrade this, like if you check the damage scaling on this, yes, it's pretty bad damage scaling, but upgrading it increases the earth armor you get, and it also buffs the golem that you summon. It also has. I know that people say that Living Earth one does fall off in the late game, and it does. It falls off because of how amazing it is in the early game. It still has good utility. The Earth armor, it doesn't decay. It's just there forever until it gets destroyed. Unlike a lot of the other like shielding, like for example, cleric shielding, right? It decays. Like yeah, it's 15 blocking, but it decays every turn. The living earth armor doesn't decay, and it actually is twice as effective against skeleton explosions. So there's that bonus. So it's just amazing early game. And the earth armor is still relevant in the late game because it doesn't decay. It's just there forever. There's also another use for it late game, which is to block and draw aggro from ranged enemies. you can just uh, fire the wand until the next time you fire it summons a golem. And let's say you encounter like a dwarven warlock, you can just fire this wand. It blocks the warlock's line of sight, and it will just draw aggro from the warlock. Like that's amazing utility. I think for that reason I put it. I would say it's not as good as these wands, um, but I would say it's around the same level as Disintegration because like the early game of this one is just insane. You if you haven't tried it, just dump this to +3 all the way to prisons, or all the way to Tengu, and it should be free. I think as long as you don't like make any huge mistakes. And corruption. Okay, corruption. I don't have a high opinion of corruption. It does no damage. The debuffs it deals is just complete RNG. And the most common debuffs, vulnerable and weaken, are just terrible. Like they don't do damage. Because like if you think about it, right? You debuff an enemy and it does 0 damage, and you think to yourself, why not just kill the enemy instead of debuffing them, right? That makes no sense. Like it's just a low impact wand. Arguably even worse than magic missile, but you know, people will defend this. I think it's debatable for sure. Um, so it's just unreliable. The upgrade on it, all it does is increase the duration of the debuffs and increases the corrupt chance. And yes, I haven't talked about the corrupt chance yet, the corrupting enemies yet, but it's not really that good. You corrupt a fly and it, I don't know, it's just not good. I don't like it. Maybe if you're a cleric, maybe there's some argument for it, but I don't know. Corrupted enemies can also wake up sleeping enemies, so there's that too. So is it really that good to corrupt enemies? It's not as good as you think it is. For that reason, it goes into the bottom tier. Okay. There's one thing I wanted to say about corruption, and that it's actually amazingly good versus the anti-magic champion. I don't know what the logic is for that, but basically anti-magic enemies are immune to like weak debuffs, I think. And so corruption always rolls for like the high, like the major debuffs or something. And so yeah, I don't know the logic to it, but just try corrupting a an anti-magic champion and you will see what I mean. It's like really good for some reason against anti-magic. Okay, next is regrowth. So regrowth has a lot of good uses. Again, this doesn't do damage either, but it has like more reliable use than like corruption. It roots enemies, so that's good for 5 turns. And actually, this also has that same trait as Fireblast. When you have like 4 available charges, you fire 2 charges at once, and the enemies are rooted for longer. So, you know, there's that too to keep in mind. So it roots enemies, it blocks vision, it generates grass for seeds. Uh, Pretty good utility mod. Uh, Better than corruption for sure. Now, there's a lot of problems I have with this, and unless you're Huntress or Mage, this isn't really doing much damage. Or like, this isn't really helping you in the early game. Because in the early game, you just want damage. And Reordering doesn't really do any damage. So, I don't know, you're a warrior and you find this, and you find that it's kind of useless. You're just meleeing them anyway. And yeah, it's pretty terrible in the early game. Um, yeah, it can like save you sometimes from guards and such, but it's pretty situational too. Like for example, it doesn't root enemies if enemies are flying or enemies are standing on like tiles that can't grow grass. Like for example, water, which is very common. And yeah, it's just not impactful in the early game at all. So I would say it's pretty bad. Um, I feel like I want to put it in C tier, but it's not even as bad as Prismatic Light. Eh, I'd say I put it in C, put it in the same tier. I think that's fair. Okay, now Transfusion. Now I did say before that ones that don't do damage are generally not very good in the early game, like Regrowth, Corruption, you know, Prislight. I mean, this one doesn't do damage, but it can insta kill. Like, yeah, that's infinite damage, right? So this one doesn't count. Uh, Transfusion doesn't do damage to non-undead enemies, but it gives you shielding, and shielding is insane in the early game. On-demand shielding, and it also charms as a bonus. So this one is actually really insane in the early game. Like even +0 is insane. Like you basically gain 5 HP. Yeah, that's insane. And yes, I know it doesn't do damage to non-undead enemies, but you can think of it this way. When you zap this wand, the enemy doesn't attack, which means you can just melee the enemy. And basically the damage of Transfusion is the melee hit that you do. So the better your melee damage is, the better this one is in the early game at least. There's also like there's also amazing utility from this Transfusion one, and that's like you can lose enemies by going out of their field of view. You can just like if you're fighting multiple enemies, you can charm one of them and attack the non-charmed enemy, and it's basically a 1v1. You know, there's just a lot of utility to this. Now, for undead enemies, though, you damage them, but the damage plus shielding is still amazing. So, oh, and one big thing about this one that's going for it, it needs no upgrades at all. +0, still an amazing one. In fact, I think the only reason you would upgrade this wand is because it's only 2 charges. You want more usage of this wand, not necessarily the shield scaling or the charm scaling or whatever. This is just an amazing utility wand. amazing defensive output. And when I see this in the early game and it's not cursed, I would just say I pretty much win the game because um, as long as you know how to play the late game, there's no like RNG BS that's going to kill you. So for that reason, I put it in A tier. I think yes, like these ones are the same thing, but I think a lot of people underrate this one. Um, like people who aren't familiar with Nine Challenge underrate this one a lot. They see that it doesn't do damage, and you know, wow, it just does 5 shielding. That doesn't do anything. But this is actually a really amazing wand. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Is there anything I want to move around here? I guess we can kind of order which ones are the best in each tier. Um, I think a lot of people want. A lot of people think that Corrosion is the best one, but I think Fireblast is the best one, and then Blast Wave, and then Corrosion. This is just my opinion. I think there's some debate in each tier. Um, let's see. Again, these are all really close, I think. Okay, let's talk about the upgrades for these, because I would say if you find this on floor 1, these two wands, by the way, Living Earth and Disintegration, I would say you can just dump these two wands all the way to Tengu, and you'll pretty much solve um, sewers and prisons. I would say like I would say Living Earth is better in the early game, but I'd say not by that much. Whereas Disintegration has a lot of other utility, more utility in the late game. So I think I would put this above Living Earth. And I think this is the right order in my opinion. Okay, so for B tier, this is hard. I think there are cases where I don't know. I feel like this is like the hardest one to order because they're all so close together. I'd say I like the lightning one better, and then I like the frost and then morning. But like uh, in the early game, in the early game, but in the late game, I would prefer this morning first. Like pretty much the other way around. So I think this is fair. Yeah, I think this is fair. And then for C tier, it's like this one does damage, this one doesn't do damage. I would like to say though that this one is I think it's A tier on Huntress. So but I don't play Huntress, so we're talking about like no gimmicks, just warrior. So I would put this in C tier. But if I was Huntress, I would put this like all the way up here. Because you can convert the root, the 5 turns of root, into damage from your bow. So this is actually like amazing on Huntress. But this one does damage, this one doesn't do damage. I think the utility of this one is better than this one, but this one does damage. This one still has good utility either way. So I would put this above Regrowth. And for D tier, I would say this one does damage, this one doesn't do damage. This one has RNG utility. It's not even reliable utility like these two. This is RNG utility. So at least this one is reliable and is okay, at least in the early game. Like in the very, very early game. So I put this above Corruption, and I think Corruption is the worst one. Fireblast is the best one. Maybe like I think the S tier wands are just so close together. I think like you could put this as the best one. You could put like Fireblast as the best one. You can put Corrosion as the best one. It's hard to say, but for now I'll just say that Fireblast is the best one. Anyway, that's gonna do it for me. You can ask me on Discord for, you know, just ping me on Discord if you disagree with me, or just put it down in the comments. Anyway, that's it for me. Bye.